Greetings everybody and welcome to 2025. Today I would like to show you how you can save your images to AWS S3 and you can be able to show those images on your application. I'm using Next.js in this particular example, but I think the concept works with any technology that you want to use for web development, right? This is one of my side projects I'm currently working on, and what I would like to do, I would like to add a new listing here. The images should be saved in a bucket which is inside S3, and the URL references should be saved in my neon database, right? Should be saved in my neon database here. So I'm just gonna refresh so that there's nothing here. It's empty like that, right? So let's go here and let me demonstrate what I'm trying to talk about. I'll just enter a random title here, just like that, random description. Then I'm just gonna add an origin, then I'm gonna add a destination, then I'm just gonna change the amount to 200. Now comes this part where to add images, right? I'll just click here and select the images I want to add. I've got these beautiful images that I have here about the camera. I'll just say open, right? And you can see those images are populated here, right? So when I create a listing, the images should be saved in my bucket, and the reference URLs that I get from S3 should be saved in my database, right? So let me say create listing. If everything goes well, I should see a toast here that says listing created successfully, just like that, and I'm redirected to my listings page. On my listings page, I should be able now to see the details of the listing, and in particular I'm looking for images. You can see the images are being displayed here, right? Those are the images are being displayed here. If I go to the home page and refresh, I should be able to see an available listing with the images as well, right? So we had nothing here on this particular bucket, but if I refresh now, you should be able to see a folder, and inside that folder is actually the image files that I actually edit from my application UI, right? And if I go into my database now and just refresh here, I should be able to see an item in entry to my database. And if you see on my images here is actually an array of strings, which is the URL, right? You can see this is actually the URL, and I can actually render that on my UI. So you can see there is the listing. I can view details. You can see the images actually uploaded. All right, so this is basically what you're going to do. We're going to focus on how we can set up S3 bucket. After setting up your S3 bucket, then I'll just explain to you the code of how I came about to be able to upload and view the images on my application. By the way, this is Next.js working with React and TypeScript, right? So let's go ahead and see how this can work for you. Right, before you make use of AWS services, you need to have an account. The sign up is straightforward from here, right? What you need to make sure to have, it's actually a credit card that you can use. If you're clever like me, you can just use maybe a virtual card, right? Exactly. So once you sign up and you already have an account, you have a console which looks almost similar or exactly like mine, right? So on this console, there are services, various services that you can use. In this particular case, we would like to use the S3 bucket. In the search input, you can look for S3, just like that, and you can see S3. And if you're like me, if you use that service a lot, you can just start it so that you can see it on this bar here, right? So let's click S3. If we click S3, we should be able to see our general purpose buckets that we have created, or if we don't have, we can just create a new bucket, right? So to create a new bucket, just click where it says create bucket, just like that, create bucket, and also make sure that the region that your bucket is the one which is closest to you. For mine, it's actually in Europe, Frankfurt, right? And make sure you have a globally unique name here, right? So mine, I'm gonna call it test app 01, just like that. and I'm going to untick block or public access. I'm gonna tick that because we will be uploading from our application, which is an outside application outside of AWS, and we'll be doing that from the front end. So we'll be uploading our files from the front end of our Next.js app, right? Then make sure you just tick this warning to say acknowledge that the current settings might result in this bucket within becoming public, right? It's fine just like that. All right, once you're done with that, then you can just go ahead and say create bucket. The bucket is being created, and once the bucket is created, you can just look here at the general purpose buckets. You can see the bucket is now appearing here. Let's click on this bucket and let's have some modifications to this bucket. I'll go under permissions. Under permissions, I would like to create a bucket policy. So I'll just click where it says edit. Right. Please take note of your bucket ARN. It's very important, this one. Right. Okay. Under the bucket policy, we need to create a new policy for this bucket. We can just simply click add statement and let's filter a service. So it will be a service under S3. So let's look for S3. Let's click S3, right? Okay, we don't want to set all actions. The actions that we need from here is actually to get an object, right? Get object, which is this one exactly. You see it's being populated here. So under object we have S3 get object, right? Then we need to add a resource as well. Add a resource. Let's just click where it says add. Under S3 the resource should be an object, and it needs ARN / bucket name / object name, right? Let me cancel that and let me quickly copy this, and let me come here, select object again, and I'll just paste that ARN just like that. I'll just say / asterisk so that I can be able to upload any file into this, right? I'll just click on add resource, right? So for the principal, I also need to add an asterisk, meaning to say anyone or any application can make a gate to this bucket, right? So once that is done for bucket policy, let's click save changes, right? There's some things that you need to do now before you forget, is to take the environmental variables and make sure you populate them in your code, right? So let me quickly bring my code editor close here, right? So there is my VS Code, and you now need the region, you already have it, and the bucket name, you already have it. So let's quickly get that. So the bucket name, let me just say, click where it says properties, right? So this is the name of the bucket name, this is the bucket name, and the region is EU Central 1, right? So let's just quickly go into VS Code, then the bucket name, let's populate it just like that, and let's go and quickly copy as well the region, which is this one, EU Central 1. Copy that and populate it in your environmental variables, right? We'll also need the access key ID and the secret, right? But for now, let's just save and go back to our bucket and have some of the settings that we need here, right? So let me go back to permissions. We are done with the bucket policy. We also need to edit the cause, right? Cross origin resource sharing, because we'll be adding from the UI front end, right? So there are some things we need here. I'm just gonna copy and paste what you need to populate here for the sake of time, right? So allow origins from anywhere, but if you are careful like me, you can just say the name of your domain here, or simply write localhost here, right? For now, for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna leave it like that, right? Allow headers, asterisk, allowed method is to put and get, and maximum age is 3, seconds, or yeah, I think it's 3 seconds, right? Once you're done with that, just click save changes, right? So this is our bucket that we've just created right now. We've given it some permissions, right? Okay, so to access this bucket now from an outside application, right, we need to have IAM rows. We need to have some credentials for us to be able to access this, right? So to create credentials, you can use the root user credentials, but it's not really advisable. So what we're going to do, we're going to look for another service which is called IAM, right, for identity access management, right? I have it already here. If you don't have, you can search for it here. I'm just going to click where it says IAM, right? Under IAM, we can create a user. So a user, basically, it can be another machine running on AWS, or it can be simply be a real user, right? So let's quickly go and click what says users, right? And a user, you can see there's already a user that has been there already. I'm just going to create a new user, and this name user of the user is going to be called test user 01. That's the name of the user, right? And let's click where it says next, right? I'm just going to attach policies directly, right? And for that, I can create a new new policies, right? Let's click here where it says create new policy. We are taken to a different page, right? And let's specify permissions, right? We can select a service that we want permissions on for this user, right? So here we can just select S3, exactly, right? And on the resources that we're working on, let's filter the resources and say the actions we need here is actually a get object, right? So get object, we need this get object, right? And we also need the put object or the delete object, right? Delete, where do I find delete object? Right, those ones are fine. Okay, and we now need to specify the error in, right? Remember I told you to take note of error in, right? Let me click here, and the name of our error in is actually called test app 01. Okay, and the name of the bucket is this exactly, right? So the object name here, we can just put an asterisk just like that, which means any object, right? Okay, once you're done just like that, let's add ARN, and once that is done, let's click next, right? The policy name, I can just give it a name, say test app policy, right? Just like that. We don't need the description. I'll just say create a policy. There is our policy created. So once that is created, if we do a search here, we should be able to see that policy, right? There it is, the policy that we just created right now. Okay, perfect. There it is, right? But we didn't finish now here with the user. You can see if I refresh, it takes me back again to specify user details. So let me just quickly rewrite again test user just like that, or 01 just like that. I'll just say next, right? Attach policy, then the policy that we specified, which is test policy, this one, right? Exactly just like that. Click next, right? Then we can just say what, create the user, right? So which means that user is actually what, created now. Okay, so I've created a policy for a user, which is basically this user, and that user is those policies attached to them, right? So what we need now to click on that user we just created right now, we now need to create the access keys, the credentials, right? So just click where it says security credentials, and you can just create access keys here, right? cool. So let's just click what says create access key, and this is going to be an application running outside AWS. Our application actually is the user, right? In this case, it's actually the user that needs these access keys to access a bucket we created here, right? Okay, so let's click on the application, right? And we have a warning here. We're just going to ignore it and say next, right? This is optional. I'll just say create access key. So we have an access key here and a secret here. So what we need now is to update our VS Code environmental variables. So if you come here, this is the ID, right? Then the secret access key. We just click here to copy it again, go to our VS Code and paste it here as well, right? Okay, cool, and hit save, right? So once you're done with that, it's time for testing now. So let's just click done here. You haven't viewed or downloaded this KQ, whatever, it's fine. I just already copied that already. Okay, that's it, right? So comes a moment of truth now to test what we have just done, this setup. It was a long process, but worth it. Now let's look at how our code is working. I'm just gonna close this M file, right? So I have a package here which is actually AWS SDK. Let me look for it at AWS client S3 and also SDK S3 request presigner, right? Make sure you have this in your package, right? Okay, so in terms of adding or creating a listing, right, I have here a server action, right, whereby I'm checking the user who's authenticated, right, and I'm just doing some validations here, right? But where the AWS is doing the work is actually here, where I generate the pre-signed URLs, right? These pre-signed URLs. So what I'm just gonna do quickly here before we do a testing, I'm just gonna say to console log those URLs so you can see how they look like, right? So let's log these upload URLs, those upload URLs. Let me console log them here, these ones, right? Okay, cool, right? So we're just gonna see those, right? So what basically we are doing, AWS is actually creating pre-signed URLs, and those URLs we actually send them to the front end. This is a server action. On my server action, I'm returning a promise, right? A promise which has got an action result just like this. I send a success, which is a boolean, a message, and optional URLs, and the ID, right? So if everything goes well, what I return back is actually this, right? So you'll be able to access them on the front end. So let me now go on the front end. This is my form that I'm using, right? The form that I'm using, I'm getting hold of these values here, right? Then the response that I get now from the server action, I now use a fetch here, a fetch request here. I just perform a fetch request. Now we will be communicating with AWS S3. That's what we mean when we say we're uploading straight from our front end. So this is a client component straight from the browser. We are actually performing a put request to our S3 and we uploading straight. So we are not going through our server, then from the server to upload S3. We are doing it straight from here, from the front end. This is actually a cool way of uploading objects which are like large files, like your videos or images which are higher, right? So sometimes Next.js won't allow you to upload a file which is more than a certain size, right? So if you want to increase the size, just go to your next config, and next config, make sure you have this experimental server action board size limit, right? And just increase it to this level, right? The other thing you need to have here, so that you can be able to read images from the new created URLs, is to put the URL of the newly created bucket, right? So ours is going to be called test app 01 EU Central 1 Amazon AWS.com, right? But let's see that in action, right? Okay, please take note that I do have an instance of S3 client, right? So I've just created in my lib. I just called it s3.ts. So this is where I'm initializing the new S3 client, and I make sure I have your region and your credentials, the ones we created earlier, right? Once we have those, then in our server action, we are making use of them just here. We are making use of that instance just here. That S3, where is it now? There we are, that S3, right? We are also making use of this function that we get from AWS SDK, right? So that we can pre-sign our URLs, right? So let's look at what does this pre-signing means, right? So I'm just gonna quickly now go to my application. Let me refresh. This one has been deleted already. Okay, so let me create a new listing here. I'll just add some random title, random description again, some random origin, some random destination. I'll just keep it like that, 100. And let me quickly upload some images here that I can work with. I'm just gonna select those ones again, and I'll just say open, right? Okay, so we will need to have the pre-signed URLs showing here, right? We need to have them here. I'm getting an error, and what is this error really saying? Let me quickly look at that error quickly and fix it before we proceed, right? Let me quickly look for it. Right, I tried to check, and you can see it says upstream image response failed, and we get a 403 forbidden, right? There's something that we did earlier on which was not 100% correct, right? When we're creating the policies on our test app policies, like here, right, we say the action should be get and delete, but actually we want the put, right? We should be able to have a put and a delete, right? So quickly we just need to edit this so that we have a put and a delete, right? So let's quickly go ahead and edit those. Right, on my permissions, I just edited. We now have the delete object and the put object, right? So you just look for it here and make sure you have got your policy editor just like that, right? Once everything is fine, just click next and hit save changes, right? Hit save changes like that. Okay, which means that when we come here and let's try to add a listing, create a new listing, right? And also let's make sure like we're still console logging our URLs. I've explained that already, no need for me. So let's quickly create a new listing here. I'll just add some random gibberish messages. I'll just select some random destinations. I'll just leave the 100 like that. Let's add the images, right? Okay, let's hit that and let's create a listing. If everything goes well, we should be able to see successful message. There we go, success created very nicely. And if we view our images after a little while, we should be able to see them just like that, which means everything is working perfectly fine, right? And if we go into our database right now and let's refresh our DB, we should be able to see an entry as well in our DB, right? Perfect. Cool. There we go with our entry, and these are the URLs of the images we edit, right? One thing to note, this is the ID of the user who's currently logged in, and also the date and the name of the image, right? Okay. The other thing we can do as well is actually to delete here, right? So if we check into our VS Code, let's look at that server action in our VS Code. So in our VS Code, under the actions, we've got a delete. So on the delete, we've got a server action where we check the user ID and we are performing a deletion here, right? But on the S3, right, S3 bucket, this is what we're doing. We have this command, delete command, which is delete objects command, that we get from our SDK, right, SDK client, right, just like that. We just delete images from here. We call S3 client and send the delete command. So that's basically how we're doing the deletion. So it means if this particular user comes and want to delete, they can press continue, and the images should be deleted from the bucket as well, and the listing should be deleted from the database, right? Exactly. Okay, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this video, please subscribe, leave a comment. If there's something you didn't understand, just put a comment there and I'll be glad to explain it to you. Thank you.